I want to start since the commissioner has been very forthright in admitting that numbers are his weakness. That's where I want to begin because that's probably where I'll be the most successful. But let me just start with just give you a picture of the overtime scenario in the Department of Corrections, right hot off the presses from the workforce report that was just put out by the Department of Human Resources. In 2017, the Department of Corrections had 19,909 hours of overtime. In FY21, 31,528. That's a 15% growth in 1 year between 2020, FY20, and FY21. We are facing a 44% turnover in a correction CO1 positions in FY21. And that is after 30% each year for the 3 years that preceded that. We are in a 5-alarm fire. This is an immediate crisis. And while I appreciate a lot of what the commissioner said and some of the talk that has been shared earlier about professional development and all of those things, which are very important things, we have an immediate crisis on our hands, and we cannot seem to get an immediate crisis response. And that is very frustrating to the men and women who are holding this crumbling system together and have been for a number of years. And so I think that's the first thing that I would say is we need from the commissioner and frankly from the governor an immediate plan to deal with this crisis. And I'm glad to hear that the commissioner is open to some good ideas, because I have some good ideas that I've shared. I spent my summer in every correctional facility and every P&P office and over and over and over again through the summer and the fall. And I sat and listened very carefully to what our members were saying about their experience in corrections. And the first thing I would say is we are in such a serious problem. People are exhausted. They feel unsafe at work. They have not seen their families or their children in years. Literally, they've skipped basketball games and soccer games and football games and birthday parties and Christmas and you name it. They've missed all that. They are disenchanted and they are exhausted. And so when I asked our members to describe just some of the words that I should use in my testimony here when I'm talking with the legislature, the words that I hear are crisis, urgent, dangerous, help. So professional development plans are great, but we need something right now in an urgent capacity to address a very dangerous situation that is not only in the facilities, but is spilling out into the communities because we're pulling people out of the field into facilities, into hospitals, and they are being worked to death. And so they are leaving. I can't tell you how many times in my tour around facilities this summer, I had a correctional officer come to me and say, my partner said that it's me or this job. I'm tired of being a single parent. You either decide if you're married to the Department of Corrections or you come home to us. And so they quit. Or they sit there. One man broke down in tears because he said, I need this job, but I also love my wife and she's going to leave me if I don't quit this job. And that's the situation we're in. Now, we are very glad that we reached the recruitment and retention bonus. That should be made permanent. And I would just say, honestly, the administration and probably the legislature are going to have to just come to terms with the fact that in order to staff these facilities in the field, it's going to cost more money. And they should plan for $10, $15, $20 million more. Not only just to fill the slots, but to fill the slots with people who will run the Department of Corrections on the ground in a way that reaches the level of expectation that Vermonters have. It's going to mean a significant investment in the people that are both there and we don't want to have leave, and the people who we want to have come. And incidentally, I love TV ads. I love Facebook ads. I love all that. But ultimately, what works in the Department of Corrections and in state government is if somebody goes to their friends and their family and says, this is a good place to work. Come work here. That's what's happening up in Northwest. That's what's happening up there. They won't do that in most facilities around the state, and they'll tell you that they won't do it because they don't want to lose their friend, and they don't want to hurt their family member, who will never see their family members, who will be working 16-hour shifts day after day after day, who will be sleeping in the parking lot of their facility, who will be falling asleep on their way home. This is a crisis that Governor Scott should be on briefing our members and the public on every single week. It is that bad. And so I just want to stress the level of urgency in that discussion. 50% of our CO1s have less than 5 years of experience. So another great idea, which this committee has heard about, and poor Senator White has heard probably more than she'll ever want to hear. We have got to fix the retirement system for correctional officers. We have got to be competitive with the states in New England that offer an early retirement, because this job is a traumatic job. The life expectancy of a correctional officer is 59 years old. The life expectancy of the rest of us, if we're lucky, is 75. They have PTSD rates higher than veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. They have high levels of alcoholism and high blood pressure and 50% divorce rates. We are killing these people. We are killing them. And unfortunately, in the last few years, our members have been made to feel like they're the enemy. Like somehow they're the enemy because a reporter decides to write a story. We have to have a big investigation. Fine, have an investigation. But what wasn't part of that investigation was a look at the management that has failed the system. That facility in Chittenden, which was the subject of that investigation, 6 superintendents in 7 years. Why? Where are those superintendents now? Why is that happening all throughout the system? That wasn't part of the study, and it didn't make it into the bill that was drafted by the management of the Department of Corrections. That is very disappointing from our members' perspective. They want to know why. Why is that happening? So the first thing I would suggest is that the administration and the legislature pour money into this department to try to stabilize the department. And then I would suggest that we have a study of the management structure of this department and the management practices of this department. Why are there 6 superintendents in 7 years? That needs to be looked at in a very serious way. And we need long-term reform of benefits like the retirement system so that we're competitive with New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, who all have better, more generous retirement benefits than Vermont has. We need people to make a career of it and to see that if they are going to do this difficult work that nobody else wants to do, then they have to see a light at the end of the tunnel. But yes, they can have career development throughout the process, and that's very important. But they need to say, yes, I can take this until I'm 55 and then I can retire. Because this job is not only mentally demanding, it's also physically demanding. And once you start to get past 55, it gets a little harder to wrestle somebody who's 20 to the ground. And remember, it's really important to remember, we have to have mental health services, not just for our members and for the offenders, but we have to remember that there's a dual role of mental health and social services and security. And security isn't just for the public. It's not just for our members. Security is for the other inmates who might not be able to protect themselves. And that's what we're honestly hearing from offenders who are saying, I think the staffing is a problem because I don't feel safe. There are not enough COs to keep me safe in these facilities. So I just want to stress how urgent the situation is. And I just want to say, because I want to be fair to the new commissioner, and we've had a couple of exchanges and they've been pretty pleasant. And he's got a huge task on his hands. But one of the things that our members are really hoping for with this commissioner and with this governor is for leadership. And sometimes that means you have to go straight to the powers that be and tell the truth. And that hasn't always been the case with the leadership of the Department of Corrections. It's been a challenge for them to get information to the governor so that the governor knows what's happening in the Department of Corrections he's responsible for. Sometimes he's shocked when we tell him what's happening in his Department of Corrections. So that is going to be a challenge for this commissioner. And I think the union has a role in helping get around that, but frankly, legislators can help with that. They can make sure that the governor knows what's happening in those facilities, because sometimes he doesn't, and he's quite surprised. That can't happen. I will say to Governor Scott's credit, we got this retention and recruitment bonus after months of hard lobbying to get our correctional officers in front of the governor. It took 3 months, and finally we got that meeting. And when we did, and when the governor heard directly from them how difficult their jobs are and what the impact of this crisis is, he responded. And so he gets credit for that. But we've got to do much more. That was just a beginning, just a start. It's a good start, but we have got so much more to do. So I think I'll conclude with that and just hope that when you think about correctional officers and you think about probation and parole officers, I mean, Senator White now has, she now has somebody who she worked with all summer, Leona Watt, who is a star in this department and who everybody respects and honors as one of the leaders in this department. But these men and women like Leona, like so many of them, they're mothers and fathers, they're Little League coaches, they're neighbors, they are regular people. And I have to say, I want to give the commissioner credit. We have in the last few years, in some ways, dehumanized them. And we've read statistics or read reports about them, and we've forgotten that these are real men and women. They break down and cry. I've seen them do it. This is a really difficult situation. And I guess what I would ask the legislature to do is sound the alarm. There is a 5-alarm fire burning out of control, and it needs immediate attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question here, and I'm not sure because I agree. I think we have a real crisis right now that needs attention, and I applaud the long-term changes because I think they'll make a real difference in the long term. But I know that you said you had some very specific recommendations, but when I was writing down the recommendations that you had here, they seemed pretty long term, not immediate, like the pension system, and that is under consideration right now. But that kind of is for, I don't know that would recruit a lot of people, but I don't think that solves an immediate issue. And the management structure study. So do you have ideas that the legislature, other than sounding the alarm, can actually do to make a difference and to make changes? Because if there are legislative changes that need to be made, I mean, putting more money in is certainly one thing, but how that money would be spent is going to make a huge difference, because we don't want to just put 15 million in and then say it's going to make a difference in the long term. So what are some of the, and maybe that's putting you on the spot, but what are some of the very specific things right now that we can do?
Well, some of those things are things that are subject to collective bargaining, but I will say that the first thing that I would do is pour money into the department specifically to raise the wages and the benefits of the people who are working there. And we have to have a reflection of the fact that the market rate is for this particular profession is too low. The rate that we're paying is too low. The commissioner has right now in his power, in the contract that exists right now, the ability to do a market factor adjustment. That should happen, and that should be funded by the legislature. There is also the ability, the commissioner has the ability to issue merit bonuses, and those should be issued right away. We should continue the deal, to start working on we should continue the deal that was put in place over the summer, but we should do more than that, because it's going to require more than that. These jobs are so difficult and only getting more difficult. And we have to put our money where we have to invest our money in the people, because the people are the ones who decide whether or not the system succeeds or fails. And if they need this, they need that support. So those are the first two things. I also think Group G, which is the retirement plan, is an important thing to get done in the legislature. And it would be great if the commissioner and the governor would support that plan, publicly support it, and say to the legislature, it has to be done. That would be a great step. Now, that would be, I understand the politics of that. It's tough.
Yep.
It's above the commissioner.
But it's in the works. It's in the works. I'm not going to comment on that one at all, because we don't yet know what the Group C plan looks like. So it's really hard to have the commissioner and the governor come out in support of it when we don't yet know what the plan is.
It would be helpful, I think, to our members to hear the commissioner say that he will fight for it and he supports it. But not just the commissioner, also the governor. He needs to say that, I think, and that is a way of both telling our members that they're on our side, they understand the problem, but also saying to the legislature, you've got to get this done. This has got to get done. This is a must-have before the legislature leaves. And that kind of leadership from the governor and from the commissioner, I think, can make a significant difference. I've seen it happen in the State House before. So while there are details to be worked out, I think that kind of immediate action would send the right kind of message to the legislature and prioritize that. We have not yet had the governor say he supports Group G, and we believe he should say that.
I don't want to talk anymore about Group G, because the pension task force has yet to receive the actuarial report on Group G. So there is no such thing as Group G. And in theory, the pension task force, and my guess is this committee, probably support some kind of Group G, but we have not. It's really hard to ask people to come out in support of it before the details are done, and they aren't done by the actuaries yet. So I think that the task force has made it very clear to corrections officers that we do support this in concept. We just need the details. So
that's a very important point, Madam Chair.
Senator Clarkson.
Sorry, I'm trying to be good. Steve,
Yes.
I understand this study is going on at South East. I also understand, given I represent that neck of the woods, that one of our biggest challenges is having correctional officers being poached by Massachusetts and New Hampshire, our adjoining states. And I don't know about New York. New York's closing a lot of the prisons that are close to us. So I don't know how big a competitor they are for poaching our people. But what are they? I mean, when you go to immediate suggestions for immediate action on how to improve things, what are they offering our correctional officers other than just more money? And it may just be more money, but I doubt it. What are they offering that we aren't offering, and how can we meet that? And so anyway, well, I guess that's my question.
More money. I think that's a very good question, Senator, and I appreciate it. More money is certainly an important aspect. Market factor adjustment is a tool that has been used in our healthcare facilities that the state runs. It could be used in the correctional system, and the commissioner can do that now. So that would be an important first step. The other thing I would say is it's really important you've heard me talk about the disconnect that exists between people who work in facilities and work in the field and the folks who work, the managers in central office. And the commissioner has a chance, no one expects he would have done it by now, but he certainly has a chance to fix that. And the tour that he recently did, I think, was well received. But our members need to see the managers in central office in the facilities, not just talking to the superintendent, but actually going down in and talking to COs on the third shift in the middle of the night. Those kind of things need to happen, and they haven't happened in years. We've got to get the managers from central office out into the field and into the facilities. The COs need to know them, need to talk to them. They need to talk to the COs. As we learned from so many experiences, when you hear from frontline workers, you can find the solutions to the significant number of problems that face this department. They have ideas about how to fix it, but they need somebody who knows them, who will spend time with them, and who will listen to them, who have the power to make those changes. So those are some immediate things that aren't financial in nature that could happen pretty quickly.
And can you just, I mean, if you may not have a better answer than because I mean, we have a real concern in Southeast of the poaching, and that adds to our incredibly high turnover rate. And I think it has one of the highest turnover rates Southeast. So I may be wrong on that, but I thought it was pretty high.
You mean Southern State?
I mean,
Southern
Southern. We are Southeast, so I say
Southeast should be open, but it's not.
right. Southern, right. So
Yeah,
so in addition to money, is there something else that New Hampshire and Massachusetts are offering that we aren't offering? Is there something else that we could be?
Yeah, I think it's financial. I think it's the way they feel they're treated by the management. I will say that our members, this is going to be slightly confusing to Senator White, but I will say this. We did survey our members around the Agency of Public Safety, and we surveyed our law enforcement members and our corrections members. And our law enforcement members overwhelmingly do not want to be part of the Agency of Public Safety. Interestingly enough, our corrections members do want to be in the Agency of Public Safety by an overwhelming, almost unanimous. And so I think there's also, some advantages that they feel to that. And as you've heard here today, there are states who do that, who have their COs in an Agency of Public Safety.
And is that true in Massachusetts or New Hampshire?
I don't know off the top of my head if that's true. I just know that that's overwhelmingly the feeling, or those who responded to the survey. And I think it was Tom Abdenor will have to tell us, but it was a pretty significant response to the survey. A large number of people responded. So it was an interesting dichotomy between the two groups during that. But so I think that we can find the solutions to this problem if we think about it immediately in a crisis mode with crisis management, and then we can look at more long-term changes, both in terms of compensation and also in terms of how the department is run. And the legislature has a role to play in that. You have the oversight role to make sure that this is getting done, and you can hold the governor's feet to the fire to make sure that he's delivering on this. This is a serious problem. We are really at a breaking point.
So what happened last year when we wrote a letter encouraging a couple of things, and was it around bonus and merit pay and bonuses? So I don't know that it did any good, but perhaps we could do the same thing this year from our committee. We can talk about that. We don't have to talk about that now, but we can talk about that have a discussion on that, about whether that would be, just to point out from our perspective as an agency or as a committee that deals with state employees. We don't deal directly with corrections, but we deal with state employees. So maybe we could, I'll take a stab at that and we can talk about it.
Madam Chair, as you know, your letters are legendary for reaping results across state government. And I would say that it did help in getting this this recruitment and retention package together. That was an enormous, all hands on deck task by the VSEA and its members. And your letter did help. You know, it did help us, in fact, get the meeting with the governor that we couldn't get. So I appreciate that. It was very effective, and I think it would be a useful tool to try again.
Yes, Senator Rom Hinsdale.
Yeah, I just have a few questions and comments. One, I'd just like to be reminded how many Vermonters are incarcerated out of state, and how many dollars that takes out of state rather than improving facilities here in Vermont. And I'm sure there's different levels of security to contend with, but I would love to be reminded of that. Two, you know, I just recall last year we had a major study coming out of some of the allegations and concerns around supervision, substance abuse, sexual assault, and coercion. And I was really horrified that so many of the recommendations seemed so disconnected from what the experiences were, and spoke for drug testing and lie detector tests for workers who were often the ones who raised the concerns. And so I just really want to back up what Steve is saying about how that escaped a management overhaul and a focus on what's going on at the management level, and focused on the staff who were the ones who were trying to improve the situation. And finally, you know, I have emails, speaking of human services and corrections, I don't think it's just symbolic. I mean, I have emails from folks, designated agencies and mental health services saying we're deeply underfunded. People are leaving, you know, our designated agencies in droves for private practice. And then we have mental health crises that fall to law enforcement and corrections to deal with. And so, you know, Nicholas, if you feel more than symbolically part of human services, I feel like it's also sounding the alarm about the continuum to make sure that people don't end up incarcerated because our other systems that we're underfunding are failing.
So
Yeah.
I just want to jump in here with one comment about the bill that came to us last year that I think you're referring to, Senator, about the polygraphs and the drug testing. If you remember, that did not come from the commissioner. That came from the House committee. The commissioner had no interest in that part of the bill.
It's just demoralizing it past one of these chambers and that
Right,
was
right.
our answer.
It is, but I just wanted to remind us that it
Yeah.
didn't come from corrections at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why it even was there, but yeah, and I think that Commissioner, if you want to comment on that, but I think that one of the things that we need to remember when we're talking about both people who are incarcerated and the corrections officers that work with them is that if we had stayed on the trajectory that we were that was predicted that in 2010, by 2021, I believe it was predicted that we would have 2,700 or 2,800 people incarcerated. But because of the judicial and justice reinvestment that Senator Sears has been leading us through, we now have about 1,700, I think. So we have made a downward trajectory. And one of the results is that the people who are currently incarcerated, and not all of them, but the majority of the people that are currently incarcerated are, in the health field, we use the term a higher level of acuity. I don't know what the term is here, but that makes it even more difficult for the corrections officers because they are dealing with a population that is at a higher level of acuity. I don't know what we call it. So, Commissioner, I don't know if you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So to respond to the senator's first question, as of this morning, we have 137 incarcerated individuals out of state, and they're housed in Mississippi. In the FY23 budget, that line is about 4.5 million. We typically don't spend that total amount, and the amount of savings that we recapture from that line is spent in justice reinvestment projects. And so that money through statute comes back into the justice reinvestment work that we're doing here in the state. So that was for your out-of-state beds question. If that
Can you tell me the name of the facility just so I can keep track of that in Mississippi?
I can.
Tallahatchie.
Rachel knows.
The county and the town.
Tallahatchie County Correctional Facility.
In Tutwiler, Mississippi.
Thank you.
I didn't quite catch the spelling, but I'll take that under
We can
advisement.
certainly pass that along to you so that you have that information.
So that, just for clarity, Senator, that 4.3 million is allocated for 350 beds. So to the commissioner's point, we have 137 filled now. So that the vacancy rate, then that rest of that funding is used for justice reinvestment.
Yes, Senator Clarkson, did you?
So what are your, who makes, is it up to you, Commissioner Nichols, is it up to you to decide where the justice reinvestment dollars are spent? If it comes back to the Department of Corrections, what are your top priorities at the moment for spending that reinvestment money? And how much is it this year?
So that money does come back into the DOC budget, but the allocation, the spending of that is based in recommendations by a committee that reviews those projects and spends that out. And so certainly DOC is a part of that, but that's a broader effort across the state that gets to determine how the justice reinvestment money is spent.
So how is it being spent this year, and how much is there at the moment? Because that's quite a number of beds. But what Al is just talking about, between the 300, what did you say, Al, 300 and how many beds?
We're allocated 350.
And so that's a huge difference. So that's a lot of savings. What are the top priorities, and what's the money?
So the figures I gave you are for FY23. We can pull down the budget adjustment testimony that would capture the FY22, the recapture of those funds, and certainly happy to give you testimony on where that's gone. There's been a slight lag in the way we've spent justice reinvestment money because that process is still ongoing. And so much of that is waiting to be spent, but we can provide you specific testimony on that if that's something that you would appreciate.
No, thank you. And I see Steve has an answer here or comment, and then I'm going to remind us that we are about 15 minutes behind ourselves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just be very brief. I just wanted to add just two things to what Senator Rahm Hinsdale raised. I just want to, first of all, remind the committee that the facility in Mississippi is a private prison owned by CoreCivic. So the state of Vermont is sending money to the private prison industry, which is, most people I think would argue, not consistent with Vermont's values. And that should be addressed in the long term. But I also wanted to point out something that Senator Rahm Hinsdale said about just how people felt about some of the allegations and how they were handled in the legislation. Our members in the Downs-Racklin report, 5 times in that report, it says, there is no widespread evidence of drug use by correctional officers. And yet it was the then commissioner's top priority in that bill. It made our members feel bad that he viewed them that way. And there's no evidence. His own research said there was no evidence of that. But you raised an important point, which I think is something that the commissioner sounds like he's going to get on and going to address, which is, why did a correctional officer who brought the allegations to the management, why was that ignored by the management? Where are those managers? And I'll tell you where they are. They're in central office today, still employed by the Department of Corrections. And that really bothers our members. So I appreciate you pointing that out. because it's part of what I think the commissioner heard when he visited the facilities about what happens when you screw up as a CO, you're out. You screw up as a manager, you move up. And that is a problem. So I appreciate you raising that, and I thank you for the time.
So I'm going to suggest that we take a really quick break here. The 7 minutes. Is that okay? And thank you, Commissioner and Al and Rachel and Steve. This was, we will consider writing one of our famous committee letters that we tend to do. And then we'll see where we go from there.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This was
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.